In the world of television, there are anchors, and then there are legends. Matt Lauer was shaping up to be the latter. Long before his name was dragged through scandal, he was the very definition of persistence. The kind of man who would take any opportunity behind the camera or in front of it, just to get closer to the dream he couldn't let go of. Born in New York City in 1957, he didn't come from wealth or influence. He came from hustle. His father was a bicycle company executive, his mother a homemaker, and Matt grew up with the kind of middle-class ambition that demanded he carve his own path. NTHAT path began in the 1970s, when Lauer enrolled at Ohio University, determined to study communications. But like many ambitious young dreamers, he found classroom walls too confining. In 1979, he left school just a few credits shy of graduating to chase the real thing, a job in television. It was a risk, but for Matt, it was all or nothing. He started as a producer, not yet the polished face America would come to recognize, grinding through jobs at local stations across the East Coast. He had no illusions. If he wanted the spotlight, he had to prove he could survive in the trenches first, and survive he did. By the early 1980s, he was popping up as an on-air reporter, then a host. He bounced between cities, Richmond, Providence, New York, building his reputation. Each new gig revealed something that executives couldn't ignore, a natural ease in front of the camera. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't stiff. He was the perfect middle ground, approachable but authoritative, casual yet commanding. Lauer had the gift of making the audience feel like he was talking directly to them, like he was sitting across the breakfast table. NBY 1992, his persistence paid off. NBC tapped him as a newsreader on their national morning program Today. It was supposed to be a stepping stone, but within 2 years, executives noticed something undeniable. Ratings were climbing when Lauer was on screen. He had that rare quality, a face people trusted before they even knew why. In 1994, he was named the official co-anchor, sitting beside Katie Couric, and that's when Matt Lauer became more than just another broadcaster. He became a household name. From that moment on, he was no longer the ambitious young producer trying to climb. He was the face millions of Americans woke up to every morning. Coffee brewed in kitchens across the country while Matt Lauer's voice filled living rooms, reciting the news of the day, cracking jokes with co-hosts, showing just enough warmth to feel familiar and just enough seriousness to feel reliable. He was America's dad, a man who seemed trustworthy, polished, dependable, and Lauer embraced that role fully. His work ethic became legendary. Early mornings, late nights, obsessive preparation. Producers and staff often remarked that he was intimidating in his standards, but viewers only saw the effortless charm. Behind the anchor desk, he projected calm authority, a steady hand in times of national crisis, and a playful energy during lighter moments. He could interview world leaders one day and cook with celebrity chefs the next. NBY, the late 1990s, Matt Lauer wasn't just a broadcaster, he was an institution. NBC leaned on him heavily, sending him to cover Olympics, political conventions, and major breaking news. Wherever there was a story worth telling, Lauer was there, suit pressed, smile intact. His ability to shift seamlessly between hard-hitting journalism and light-hearted entertainment made him the ultimate network asset. NBUT. Beneath the gleaming surface, there were already signs of another story quietly unfolding. Staffers whispered about his controlling nature, about how the charming anchor could quickly turn cold behind the scenes. He was fiercely competitive, quick to guard his position, and unafraid to flex the power that came with his growing fame. NTO the world, however, none of that mattered. What they saw was the golden boy of morning TV, trusted, admired, and indispensable. Matt Lauer had achieved what so many in television only dreamed of. He wasn't just in the spotlight. He owned it. By the time the new millennium arrived, Matt Lauer wasn't just hosting the Today Show. He was the Today Show. His rise from a local broadcaster to America's most trusted morning companion had cemented him as one of the most recognizable faces on television. Every morning, millions tuned in, not just for the headlines or the weather, but for Matt. He had become the reassuring constant in a world that seemed to change overnight. NHI's presence was magnetic. With Katie Couric at his side, the show soared to new heights. Their chemistry wasn't manufactured. It was lightning in a bottle. She played the approachable girl next door, while he embodied the polished yet playful professional. Together, they turned morning television into must-watch TV. Advertisers poured in millions. NBC executives cheered, and Matt's stock within the network skyrocketed. NBY, the early 2000s, Matt was NBC's crown jewel. His salary reflected it, ballooning to over $25 million a year, making him one of the highest-paid personalities in television. That paycheck wasn't just for reading headlines. It was for carrying the network on his shoulders. When Matt spoke, America listened. He had become a symbol of trust, and NBC knew it. NHI's role wasn't confined to the studio. Matt became NBC's go-to face for the biggest events around the globe. He covered presidential elections, interviewed world leaders, and even trekked across continents to report on the Olympic Games. Whether he was in Athens, Beijing, or Rio, Matt brought the world closer to living rooms across America. He could shift seamlessly between hard news and heartwarming features, one moment questioning a president about foreign policy, the next chatting with a pop star about their new album. That versatility made him invaluable. In BUT, his power extended far beyond the screen. Inside NBC, Matt Lauer was more than just a co-anchor. He was a force. He had sway over decisions, influence over producers, and a reputation for being someone you didn't cross lightly. While viewers saw the polished smile, staffers whispered about the sharp edges behind it. He was competitive, territorial, and fiercely protective of his image. His approval could make a career, and his disapproval could end one. And yet, to the public, none of this was visible. What they saw was perfection. Matt's interviews with world figures became defining television moments. He pressed hard when needed, disarmed with charm when appropriate, and always kept control. Whether it was sitting across from Hillary Clinton, grilling George W. Bush, or sparring with Hollywood elites, Matt made it look effortless. As his star grew brighter, so did his celebrity. He was photographed at charity galas, mingling with A-listers, and rubbing shoulders with the most powerful figures in entertainment and politics. To the outside world, he had it all: fame, fortune, respect, and influence. For aspiring journalists, Matt Lauer represented the pinnacle of success, the dream everyone wanted but few could touch. NBUT's success came at a price. The demands of his role consumed him, and whispers about his personal life grew louder. His marriage to Annette Roque faced turbulence, with tabloid headlines occasionally hinting at troubles behind the white picket fence image. Yet, each time, Matt managed to keep the rumors at bay, projecting the persona of the devoted family man. In many ways, he seemed untouchable. At NBC, he was the anchor around which everything revolved. Competitors came and went, but Matt endured, year after year, with a grip on the audience that felt unbreakable. Executives catered to him, viewers adored him, and colleagues, at least publicly, respected him. NBY, the mid-2010s, Matt Lauer had reached the summit. He was not just a broadcaster, but an empire in himself. Every move he made was newsworthy, every appearance a reminder of his dominance. It seemed impossible to imagine the Today Show or morning television without him, and yet, just beyond the dazzling lights of the studio, shadows were forming. Rumors too quiet for the headlines began to circulate, whispers of behavior that didn't match the trusted persona on screen. Matt Lauer was at the top of the world, but cracks were beginning to show in the foundation he had built. Every empire, no matter how dazzling, begins to show fractures long before it collapses. For Matt Lauer, the carefully constructed image of America's most trusted anchor carried a shadow, one that insiders whispered about, even as viewers remained blissfully unaware. To millions of loyal fans, he was the reassuring voice of the morning. But inside the walls of NBC, the story wasn't nearly so pristine. Rumors about Lauer's behavior had circulated quietly for years. To the public eye, he was the polished professional, but to those who worked closely with him, he could be sharp, controlling, and at times, intimidating. Colleagues noticed how his charm could switch off in an instant, replaced by a colder, more domineering side. He wasn't just the face of the Today Show, he was its gatekeeper. Careers rose or fell depending on where they landed with Matt, and that power gave him an aura that both commanded respect and bred fear. Behind the scenes, Lauer's personal conduct was a subject of speculation. Staffers occasionally spoke of flirtations, comments that crossed the line, and a work environment that blurred professional boundaries. In an industry where power dynamics were already skewed, Matt's influence was overwhelming. Producers and interns alike knew that a nod from him could secure opportunity, while his disfavor could mean being sidelined. The whispers painted a picture not of the smiling anchor America thought they knew, but of a man who understood just how untouchable he really was. NBC itself, some would later argue, fostered this climate. The network had a reputation for protecting its stars, and Matt was its brightest. He was the reason millions tuned in, the reason advertisers spent billions. Executives had little interest in rocking the boat. As long as the ratings soared and the show remained a juggernaut, why question the behavior of its leading man? In this culture of silence, whispers stayed whispers, and Matt continued to reign unchallenged. Still, traces of his behavior occasionally surfaced in public view. Tabloid stories hinted at extramarital issues. Colleagues described him as moody, unpredictable, sometimes warm, sometimes ice-cold. Guests noticed the duality. Off-camera Matt wasn't always the same genial figure they saw on screen. Some admired his precision and work ethic. Others saw arrogance and entitlement. But to viewers at home, none of this filtered through. They only saw the curated persona, carefully polished every morning for broadcast. There were also the quiet red flags, details that, in hindsight, seemed glaring. The button installed in his office desk that could lock the door remotely, reportedly framed as a security feature, would later become a chilling symbol of hidden abuses of power. Stories of employees feeling cornered, trapped, or pressured lingered in the background, though they rarely made it beyond hushed conversations in newsroom hallways. The dichotomy was stark. On screen, Matt Lauer embodied stability. He covered national tragedies with empathy, celebrated American triumphs with enthusiasm, and guided viewers through the chaos of the world with a steady hand. Off-screen, a more complicated man emerged, competitive, controlling, and increasingly insulated by his own fame. By the mid-2010s, cracks in his public image were harder to ignore. Katie Couric's departure in 2006 had exposed Matt to more scrutiny, and his high-profile clashes with colleagues, particularly during Ann Curry's short-lived tenure as co-host, hinted at a man more concerned with control than collaboration. Viewers sensed tension, even if they couldn't quite place it. Curry's emotional on-air farewell in 2012 and the widespread belief that Matt had orchestrated her ousting tarnished his golden boy reputation. For the first time, the public caught a glimpse of the ruthless ambition beneath the charm. Still, his star power was so immense that the network weathered the storm. NBC defended him, ratings eventually stabilized, and Matt continued as the face of today. Yet the whispers grew louder. Industry insiders knew something was amiss. The public didn't yet see the full picture, but the cracks were widening, and it was only a matter of time before the facade came crashing down. Matt Lauer was still at the top of the mountain, but the ground beneath him was beginning to shift. It was late November 2017 when the story broke, a single headline that would dismantle decades of trust in less than 24 hours. The #MeToo movement was already tearing through Hollywood and politics, exposing powerful men who had long operated in shadows. From Harvey Weinstein to Kevin Spacey, the tidal wave of accountability was rewriting the rules of celebrity and power. But no one expected Matt Lauer, the golden boy of morning television, to be next. News hit like a thunderclap. NBC announced, in an abrupt and stunning statement, that Matt Lauer had been terminated effective immediately. His co-hosts, Savannah Guthrie and Hoda Kotb, sat visibly shaken on air as they delivered the words no one thought they would ever say. Matt Lauer, their friend and colleague, was accused of sexual misconduct in the workplace. The speed of his downfall was breathtaking. Just one day earlier, he had been sitting in his chair on the Today Show, smiling into cameras, guiding America through its morning routine. Now, his career was over. The complaint, filed by a female NBC staffer, alleged shocking misconduct that had taken place during the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics. But it didn't stop there. Within hours, more accusers came forward. Suddenly, the whispers that had lingered in the shadows for years burst into full public view. Reports painted a disturbing picture. Lauer was accused of inappropriate advances toward female colleagues, of creating uncomfortable and coercive situations, of abusing the immense power he wielded inside the network. The most chilling revelation came from his office itself, a hidden button under his desk that could remotely lock the door. What NBC had once described as a security measure now looked like a tool of entrapment. It became the most infamous detail of the scandal, a symbol of how unchecked his power had been. NTHE allegations grew darker as more women stepped forward. Some spoke of being summoned to his office only to find themselves trapped. Others described relationships that they later realized were built on manipulation and imbalance of power. The man who had once been the trusted face of morning television was suddenly being described in headlines as a predator, a manipulator, a man who had used his status to cross lines for years. NTHE reaction was immediate and visceral. Viewers who had welcomed him into their homes for decades felt betrayed. Fans flooded social media with disbelief. How could Matt Lauer, the smiling, steady anchor they trusted, be guilty of such behavior? The contrast between his on-air persona and the allegations was too stark, too jarring. It felt like the nation had woken up to find that its most trusted neighbor had been living a double life all along. Inside NBC, chaos reigned. Executives scrambled to control the narrative, insisting they had acted the moment they received the first official complaint. But critics asked, how could behavior this egregious have gone unnoticed for so long? Did the network turn a blind eye to protect their star? Was Matt's immense value to the Today Show the reason no one dared challenge him sooner? NTHE scandal dominated headlines for weeks. Every new revelation chipped away at the myth of Matt Lauer. His meticulously crafted image as America's morning companion was gone, replaced by a portrait of abuse, secrecy, and betrayal. Advertisers fled, fans recoiled, and colleagues distanced themselves. His name, once synonymous with trust, had become a cultural shorthand for the abuse of power. And just like that, it was over. No farewell broadcast, no redemption tour, no chance to explain himself live on air. The man who had spoken to America every morning for over 2 decades was silenced overnight. Matt Lauer's career didn't end with a graceful retirement. It ended with a scandal so explosive that his legacy was rewritten in a single week. NTHE fall was shocking not only for its speed, but for its completeness. One moment he was at the pinnacle of influence. The next, he was banished from the very institution he had built his life around. Matt Lauer wasn't just unemployed, he was radioactive. When the cameras went dark and the studio lights faded, Matt Lauer vanished. The man who had once been a daily fixture in America's living rooms became a ghost overnight, retreating to the sprawling estate he owned in the Hamptons. For decades, he had lived in the public eye, waving to fans outside Rockefeller Plaza, laughing on morning television, appearing on red carpets beside world leaders and celebrities. Now his world had shrunk to a gated property in Sag Harbor, where silence replaced applause, and paparazzi cameras were the only ones pointed in his direction. And at first, the images that surfaced were almost surreal. Lauer, who once wore tailored suits and delivered news to millions, was spotted in baseball caps, old sweatshirts, and unshaven stubble. He looked unrecognizable. Headlines blared. From star anchor to recluse, the photographs became symbols of his fall from grace. A man who had once been untouchable, reduced to dodging photographers on quiet Hampton streets. And inside the estate, his personal life unraveled as quickly as his career. His wife, Annette Roque, had endured public speculation about his alleged infidelities for years. But after the scandal broke, their marriage collapsed. In 2019, after more than 2 decades together, Annette filed for divorce. Reports claimed she walked away with a settlement estimated at $20 million, while Lauer lost not only his family unit but also the stability he had clung to through years of rumors. For his children, the fallout was devastating, watching their father transform from respected journalist to national disgrace. Friends who once orbited his celebrity pulled back. In New York society, proximity to Matt Lauer was no longer a badge of honor but a liability. He had been a regular presence at charity galas, Hampton's dinner parties, and industry events. Now, the invitations stopped coming. Former colleagues avoided his name, and NBC, once his kingdom, acted as if he had never existed. The silence from his old world was deafening. NBUT. If Lauer hoped to quietly rebuild, he was mistaken. The scandal had branded him permanently. Tabloids continued to chase him, publishing updates on his whereabouts, scrutinizing every rare public appearance. Whether he was skiing in New Zealand, spotted at a Hamptons restaurant, or rumored to be dating again, the coverage was always tinged with derision. The man who once shaped national conversations was now reduced to gossip column fodder. Privately, reports suggested that Lauer wrestled with bitterness. He felt abandoned, even betrayed by NBC, the network he had given his life to. Friends claimed he fumed over the way his colleagues announced his firing on air, publicly disowning him in real time. He reportedly complained that he had been made into a scapegoat, that the punishment outweighed the crime. But if he expected sympathy, it never came. The culture had shifted. In the #MeToo era, forgiveness was scarce and second chances even scarcer. Still, there were whispers of attempted comebacks. Rumors surfaced that Lauer had pitched book ideas, hoping to tell his side of the story. Others said he flirted with podcasting, seeking a platform where he could regain some voice. But none of it materialized. Publishers weren't willing to gamble on his name, and networks wanted nothing to do with him. The doors that once opened effortlessly now stayed shut. Years passed, and Matt Lauer remained in exile. His estate, once a weekend escape from the bustle of Manhattan, became his full-time cage. The man who once thrived on the spotlight was learning to live without it, though not by choice. He went from hosting the world to hiding from it, a symbol of how quickly power can evaporate. And in the end, his life in the Hamptons became a stark contrast to the one he had lived before. No more world tours, no more presidential interviews, no more smiling crowds outside the studio. Just long days behind stone walls, watching a legacy slip further away with each passing year. Matt Lauer wasn't just out of work, he was out of the world he once owned. Legacies are fragile things. For decades, Matt Lauer's was built on trust, charm, and the steady rhythm of his voice guiding America through its mornings. He had been more than a broadcaster. He was a companion in kitchens and living rooms, a constant presence during moments of national triumph and tragedy. But legacies, no matter how carefully constructed, can be shattered in an instant. For Matt Lauer, the story of his career is now less about his accomplishments and more about his downfall, a cautionary tale etched into the era of #MeToo. When people look back, they remember not the interviews with presidents or the Olympic coverage, but the button under his desk, the accusations, and the stunning announcement of his firing. That single detail, the hidden lock, became a cultural symbol of abuse of power. It turned Lauer's name from one of admiration into one of infamy. The man once praised for his professionalism is now synonymous with scandal. In NBC, the network that once celebrated him as their crown jewel, has erased him from its history. He has no part in anniversary specials, no clips featured in retrospectives. His 2 decades of dominance are treated as if they never happened. For younger viewers, Matt Lauer isn't even a memory. He's just another disgraced celebrity whose story is told in whispers. For older viewers, the betrayal still stings. In the broader industry has also shifted. Matt Lauer's story is often cited as a turning point in how networks handle workplace misconduct. No longer can star power shield bad behavior in the same way. Companies are under more pressure to act swiftly, to hold even their brightest stars accountable. In this sense, Lauer's fall wasn't just about him. It was about the culture that enabled him, and the reckoning that followed. NFOR Matt personally. The question of redemption lingers, but the answer seems clear. Attempts to stage a comeback have gone nowhere. Publishers won't touch his story, networks won't risk their reputations, and the audience that once adored him has moved on. Unlike other disgraced figures who eventually claw their way back into the public eye, Matt's brand is too toxic, his name too tainted. The trust he broke cannot be repaired. And that is the cruel irony. Matt Lauer's entire career was built on trust, on being the man viewers could rely on to tell them the truth each morning. Once that trust was shattered, there was nothing left to salvage. Fame built on credibility doesn't survive when credibility is destroyed. He isn't just unemployed, he is unemployable. Today, his life is a shadow of what it once was. He remains secluded, rarely seen, occasionally surfacing in paparazzi photos that show a man aged not just by time, but by disgrace. While his peers continue to host shows, write memoirs, and enjoy legacies as respected journalists, Matt Lauer's story ends in silence. His wealth may allow him comfort, but no amount of money can buy back the respect he once commanded. The tragedy of Matt Lauer's legacy is not only the scandal itself but the duality it revealed. He was two people, the trusted anchor millions loved, and the man accused of exploiting his power behind closed doors. That contradiction will forever define him. And so, the final chapter of Matt Lauer's career isn't about triumph or resilience. It's about warning. A reminder that power without accountability corrodes, that even the brightest stars can fall, and that no one, no matter how polished, no matter how trusted, is untouchable. Matt Lauer will never return to television. His story will never be one of redemption. Instead, it is the story of how a man who once had everything lost it all, not in slow decline, but in one breathtaking collapse.